Good mythical afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Ayala with another vlog for you. This is Abolition and Women's Rights Movements. Please make sure that you're writing down your notes and you view this as many times as you need to be successful. At the end of this vlog, there is a question that I want to verbally say. Please make sure that you write that in the doobly-doo or you bring it in to school on a sheet of paper and turn it in to me on the due date. As always, please make sure to sit back, relax, and write your notes, and don't forget the question at the end. And this is abolition and women's right movements. So the first thing we need to look at are things that we need to ponder, things that we need to look at. So three main topics that we need to be able to review and be able to understand by the time we're done with this video. One, who was involved in the abolition movement? Two, who was involved in the women's rights movement? And three, how was abolition and women's rights movement related? So to start right away, we're going to talk about abolition's call for ending slavery. So first of all, abolition movement began in the late 1770s, right around the same time that we declared independence and separated from Britain. By 1804, so we've already discussed, most northern states have outlawed slavery just because there was no economic incentive to do so. In 1807, importation of slavery was outlawed in the whole United States. So what that means is that if a southern slave owner needed more slaves, they had to have the slaves reproduce or buy it from another slave owner in the South. So the first one we're going to talk about is William Lloyd Garrison. In 1831, he writes a newspaper called The Liberator, which was an extremely radical abolition newspaper. One of his most favorite quotes is, "I will not retreat a single inch, and I will be heard." So this is a guy who's willing to make a lot of noise and maybe even sacrifice his life or his own businesses to actually try to remove slavery from the United States. Then we have Frederick Douglass, who's an eyewitness to slavery. He was a slave. He actually escaped when he was younger. He wrote his own autobiography. And actually, when he wrote his autobiography, he actually ended up leaving the United States and going to Britain. And then later, after he goes to Britain, after all of his talks running around about how horrible slavery was, he actually buys his freedom from his old slave master that he fled from. Pretty neat guy. Really good autobiography if you ever have the time to read. Also, a close friend of Harriet Tubman and Abraham Lincoln later. Sojourner Truth, one of my favorite people during this time period. She was born a slave, and she actually fled to the Quakers in Pennsylvania, who actually freed her. And if you remember the Quakers, as I always say, they're like the real peaceful type. As I always say, they're hippies without the drugs and more Jesus. Really, really quick, easy way to remember it. And they freed her because they don't believe in slavery. And she was a devout Christian. She actually changed her name to Sojourner Truth to reflect her worth. She's going to sojourn from one place to another and declare the truth to the people. She's going to speak about slavery and the Christian religion like it is, and how everyone should be free to make their own choices. So from there, the Underground Railroad was an above-ground escape route from the south to north. It was not underground. Underground just means hidden. So this was a way for slaves to escape from the south to the north or even to Canada. They usually hid at night. Usually traveled at night, and hid during the day at stations or people's houses, farmhouses, whatever. Frederick Douglass was used as the conductor, and actually so was Harriet Tubman. Speaking about Harriet Tubman, she's one of the most famous conductors in the Underground Railroad. When she was younger, she tried to protect her other slaves from beatings and from other things. And unfortunately, all she got for that was a fractured skull, which was one of the reasons why she flees. In 1849, she escapes. She worked the Underground Railroad, and she actually never lost a passenger. She's well known for that, and also becomes the most wanted woman in the United States during the American Civil War for the South, and couldn't read a lick, which is pretty neat. As she always said, she's like, to quote her, I freed 1,000 slaves, and I would have freed 1,000 more if they knew they were slaves. So just a little tidbit. From there, about the women. So women's reformers face barriers. So the first one we'll look at over here is Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and she wanted to join the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London. So she goes, and they actually put her and the other women in kind of this back corner room, and they put this like screen up so that the men couldn't see her. And she gets really, really upset because she wanted to speak about the horrors of slavery, but she wasn't even allowed to talk because she was a woman. And because the women at the time in the 1800s had very few legal or political rights, there was a few states in the North that would allow them to vote, but overall there was really nothing going on. So what happened is Elizabeth Cady Stanton got around with a whole bunch of other women and some men and started thinking to themselves, if we're fighting for African American rights and abolitionist rights and to help slaves escape, why can't we at least have the vote or be able to hold land or have political and legal rights? That is not right at all. So we get to the Seneca Falls Convention. So we talk about Elizabeth Cady Stanton and a lady named Maud. Held the Seneca Falls Convention in Seneca Falls, New York, in July 19th and 20th, 1848. And this was a large meeting to write and to fight for women's rights. There, they actually wrote what was known as the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions. So what this is more or less they take the writing of the Declaration of Independence and they put a little spin on it and make it about women's rights. Shouldn't all women be down with their creator with inalienable rights? That type of deal. Many of these women fought for suffrage or the right to vote. And what's really kind of interesting, some men and newspapers actually made fun of these women who wanted to vote and have equality with men because they were like, why would a woman want to be in the man's spheres of politics and fighting? What's the purpose of that? Why wouldn't they want that? That's insane. The person must be crazy. So when we look at this, it's really fascinating that these women who have been both Caucasian and other minority groups, let's use that for this time, never got the vote. They don't get the vote till 1919. So we end up with Sojourner Truth also wants to help attach the women's movement with the abolition of slavery. And what kind of happened, they're kind of like the same because they both are movements to give power to the powerless, to give those who don't have a voice in our government, a voice in our society, a way to express themselves either through voting or just being able to choose what they want to do with their own life. Susan B. Anthony, who's a skilled worker organizer, she worked both in what's called the temperance movement, which is getting rid of alcohol, and the women's movement. And one of the big things that she does is she helps pass property laws for married women so that after they were married, they were able to keep their land, or when their husband died, be able to keep their land for themselves instead of having to give it to a male relative. Some picture citations. Today's question, very, very quickly, over in the doobly-doo on a sheet of paper, is what modern social movement do you agree or disagree with? Why? And please explain your thoughts, because this giving me a little tidbit is not going to help all the way. I need it expanded. Why is it important to you? And as always, don't forget to be awesome.